What's going on? This is Zach Adelstein with DFS Army, and today I'm here with Aaron Friedman, and we're going to be going over the Week 9 main slates for college football. Um, Last week, pretty good week. Another some fun slates, some really big games this week. Really fun slate to hit up. Um, I personally had a decent week last week. Main slate didn't do well. Took down the quarters actually on the quarters, dimes, and dollar max on the night slate on DraftKings, which was nice little bankroll builder. Yeah, excited for another fun week this week. And yeah, how's your week, Aaron?
Good. It's been interesting to follow some of these games and some of the developments with a lot of the weather going on throughout the country.
Yeah, for sure. And it's something to watch. We had that down in Texas a couple weeks ago and affected some games. I think affected some games in some weird ways and not others in other ways. And but yeah, it's going to be something to watch for sure and keep an eye on in some of these Midwestern games for sure. Um, but yeah, we been having a ton of slates this week and the whole rest of the month. We have again football all the way till Thanksgiving, basically, um, and then we have the big Thanksgiving Day slates. Black Friday slate and that Saturday weekend, and then we get the championship. So it's kind of all downhill from here, but really fun end of the year. But yeah, let's get going on this slate. 14 games here, a little bit bigger slate for DraftKings. Some really good matchups, some duds in here and there. Started off with Kentucky going to Mizzou. Totals here is 41 with Kentucky favored by one. Starting with the quarterbacks, nothing really I I don't understand totally how he's that quarterback prospect that everyone sees, but those NFL scouts love him. Nothing for DFS for me though. Going over to running back, some interesting plays. I think Rodriguez definitely in play. Mizzou has been good at times against the run, has struggled other times, but he's getting that volume since he's come back from that suspension. Didn't get as much last week against Tennessee just because of the game script, but you can see in those close games he's getting decent volume, getting a nice target, getting a nice share, getting a little bit of target share as well. Also, go down to Cody Schrader for Missouri. He's really taken off the past couple weeks. 36 carries the last couple weeks, only one touchdown, getting a couple of receptions though. Not necessarily the most efficient guy when they're not playing Vandy, but still decent play at 4,400, decent value play here. Uh, Going over to wide receiver, two places I kind of want to hit here. Tavian Robinson is a decent mid-price play. Hasn't done great the last couple of weeks, but he had those big games at the beginning of the season. He's a GPP play for me. Definitely is their wide receiver one most weeks. Then the other guy I really like here is Dominic Levitt. Had another 10 targets last week. He's kind of up and down this year, depending on where they are. But if they're going to get him more involved again, I love it. He has nice upside. Really started the year strong before fading the past couple weeks. But yeah, I really like the spot for him. What are you seeing here, Aaron?
Yeah, I agree. The running backs are really interesting, and this is a deep running back slate. So
Yeah,
um, you'll want to like mix and match a lot of guys, and I definitely um want both Rodriguez and Schrader in my pool. And then I really like Love It. He's on DraftKings, he's all format viable to me.
yeah, I don't mind him at all in this matchup. Um, Decent price, and there's some places here, some interesting value plays here, but not a ton all over, especially wide receiver. Um, Going over to the next game, we have Florida traveling down to A&M. This game has a 55.5 point total with A&M favored by 3.5. Um, Going over to the quarterbacks, some kind of interesting plays here. Richardson's cheap enough where I think you can go there. Um, if he gets you 16 to 18 points, he's fine. Not going to necessarily win you things, but decent play. But he can go off. I mean, he had those 31 points against LSU, which I think is a much better defense than A&M has right now. He gets you 20 to 30 points. It's very nice. That being said, he has a floor. He has that,
Yeah.
nine, he has a four, he has a six. So, it's a boomer bust kind of play, but he's cheap enough where you can you can do that. Wegman, I think he's going to be a very good quarterback. I love the volume he had last week against Ole Miss. I think he's a GPP play here. I like what they're doing with him. He's a pocket guy, so doesn't necessarily have that rushing upside. But at 5,400, you don't necessarily need that rushing upside. So he is a guy I'll have in my player pool. Kind of look at it, figure out how this is going to go. But he's a guy I like to stack for some cheap stacks with some of the wide receivers we're going to talk about. Going over to running back. Still in the wrong. Have both of them pulled up. Over to running back. I don't like these Florida. They're decent. There's enough running backs here. I don't really have to get to any of them. Etienne is a guy that's always been cheap and a decent play, but there's some other cheap guys I like. I don't know what DraftKings has against Devin Achane. Last week he had 33 DraftKings points, so they lowered his salary by 500.
Yeah, he's like full price on FanDuel.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. He's kind of like just plug him in and play him. He had that floor game against Alabama, but that's against Alabama, and this is not Alabama's defense. For me, he's one of the top plays on the slate, if not the top play of the slate at this price for value. Going over to wide receiver, there's the two wide receivers. Again, I want to hit up for A&M. Evan Stewart's finally appropriately priced. Forever he was down there in the mid fours, low fours. He's getting a ton of volume. He has some decent upside. I still think he's a decent GPP play, especially if you want to stack him with Wegman. You get both of those. It kind of averages out the value, and you can have both of them there for, 11-4. And then the other place I really like is Moose Muhammad. Kid has been getting a ton of targets too. He had that dud in there, so there is a dud possibility. But, you got a 26, a 28, and an 18. He's getting 9 to 10 targets a game, a lot of these games, and you can stack him there for, just over 10K with his quarterback. So those are two plays I kind of like. I honestly don't hate stacking this game if you're playing, 150 lineups. You can put you can put Richardson in there. You can put Achane in there, Wegman, one of these receivers, and then you can just literally pay up for everything else. And if they go off here, if this game shoots out, that could be a GPP winning lineup for sure. And I don't mind stacking Wegman with Achane, considering the targets and the receptions he's getting. He had 7 receptions last week and a touchdown. So it's fine to stack them at their prices. But yeah, so this is a game I really like for DFS purposes. What about you, Aaron?
Yeah, I think all the plays you mentioned are really strong. I like the quarterbacks, Wegman's a great price, I think. Yeah, it's a great GPP game. Other Achane I think's cash viable, and then the rest I'd love in GPP, but probably not cash. But it's a great. You want these 5 pieces in your player pool. Wegman, Richardson, Achane, Muhammad, and Stewart. You want all those guys sprinkled in for sure.
Yeah, I completely agree. This is a game that I could see going to the over. These defenses both have issues sometimes. Going over to Texas Tech at TCU. Tech, first of all, is so hard to predict what they're going to do right now. I like Morton here if he plays, but last week we saw 3 quarterbacks, all of them threw interceptions. So we have no idea. Morton got the most snaps, but very, very risky to go there. Max Duggan is always in play. Texas Tech does not have a great defense. Going back to this game does have a 69.5 point total, and Tech is favored by 9.5. It's a huge, total. 39.5 to 30 point ITTs, individual team totals, and just, nice places there. That being said, Duggan last week took a hit to the shin or calf and quit running. I think he had 1 run after that. It was the middle of the second quarter. That's why you'll see his run numbers are down. And without that rushing, I think it really hurts his upside. There's a lot of quarterbacks on this slate that I like around this price. So I'm just going to a ton of great value quarterbacks for cash or anything. So I think Duggan's going to be a GPP play for me just until I see him run and make sure he can get going with his legs. Going over running backs, I don't know what they have against Kendra Miller, same kind of thing. But he consistently is getting great numbers. He has 4 games out of the past 5 over 20 fantasy points, 25, just a ton of fantasy points, ton of production, and he's still sitting there at 6,300. So he's a guy I really like in all formats. And then going over to wide receiver, this Texas Tech team, you can kind of sprinkle in some of them in GPPs. It's really hard to figure out what they're going to do. Xavier White didn't have, I figured last week with Price back in, he wasn't going to do much, and he didn't do much. Price is a guy I kind of like for GPPs just because I think everybody's going to be off of him, and then eventually he's going to have a big game again. And I think they're going to have to throw it a ton here. And then Bradley had he had the most targets last week. I think he only caught 2 of them, but he had like 9 targets last week. Probably not a ton to go off of here, just with the way it's literally is like a roulette wheel with who they're going to hit. The main receiving threat in this game is going to be Quentin Johnson. Had a couple down weeks after having some huge weeks, but even in those down weeks, he's getting nice production compared to where he was to start the year for sure. He's kind of where we thought he would be. I think this is a great spot for him. If Duggan's not able to run, he's going to have to throw it more. And if he's going to throw it more, Quentin Johnson should be the guy that they're trying to target, because I think they're going to, Texas Tech's not going to have to put that extra guy in the box. And Quentin Johnson is the guy that can make the contested catches, the big dude. GPP play, though, just with his volume the past couple of weeks. What are you looking at here, Aaron?
I'm looking at mostly Duggan and Miller here. Duggan really, quarterback on FanDuel is a little weird, so I'm looking at him a lot on FanDuel just with the total and some of the weather spots and injury spots that some of the other QBs have. So I like Duggan a lot and Miller. Texas Tech's like all a big roulette wheel, because even Morden can be subbed out for the show last week for a little bit. So Morden's a little dicey too, and if this game gets out of hand, I don't think it's good news for any of the Texas Tech pieces.
No, I mean, Smith got in a few snaps too. All 3 of them got in. All 3 of them threw interceptions. It was very ugly. Moving on. This game fascinates me. UNC going to Virginia. We kind of had the team last year that aired it out all over the field, ran the ball a ton, had a ton of receivers, and this year can't do it against a team that this year airing it out a ton, throwing it, getting it all over the field, has a quarterback that can run. And then we have an amazing passing offense against a pretty mediocre to bad passing defense. And then we have an absolutely putrid passing offense this year against an absolutely putrid passing defense this year. So it's kind of, there's some cash play, some GPPs in here. Let's go. Drake May, amazing. Top play every week. He's on the board. Not priced up enough here. Went off last week. Look at 4 of his last 5 games are, over 35 DraftKings points. And even the one that wasn't is plenty of a floor for you. He's top cash play for me for sure. But no, I'm just strong. I think you can bring it back in GPPs. He's going to throw it a ton. Last week he didn't, but he ran it 20 times. So he's going to run it a ton. He's going to throw it a ton. If he can stop throwing interceptions and start throwing touchdowns, he's got upside. And this UNC defense is going to try to give him time and space to do that. Now, whether he can do it or not is to be seen, but it's a decent play. Not a ton I really like at running back here. I just don't think you need to go there. Going over to wide receiver, a few places I want to go. Josh Downs is always a top play at 11 receptions last week, had 16 targets, I believe. Big game for him, but he's expensive. The other receiver won me GPPs last week was Antoine Green. Last week he was sitting there at 3,800. He now has over 15 fantasy points in 4 of his 5 games that he's played. He was injured before this. went off, 2 huge games. He's getting seen a lot. I'm basically right now, he basically is very comparable to Josh Downs for me, except you're getting an $1,800 reduction. So I think both of those guys are definitely in play. Both of those guys are cash plays for me. And then Thompson is the top guy here for he's averaging 10 targets a game. My biggest problem with him is he does not have a touchdown on the year. He does have one rushing touchdown, but does not have a receiving touchdown on the year. And somehow Armstrong forgot to throw the ball. So if he can throw him the ball and get it to him, he is a nice play. And this UNC defense is atrocious. But yeah, GPP only there. What are you looking at, Aaron?
Yeah, this game is fascinating for me. I don't know why Virginia's gotten money this week. So I love this game for cash, but I'd actually I think it's a good game to get off of for GPPs because a lot of the Virginia games have gone under, like significantly gone under, and or the running backs might be a interesting
pivot.
Nobody's gonna play Hampton, but I could see like the passing game being shut down, or the passing game just not being needed more. But
well, with Caleb Hood out, Hampton should get some more run.
Yeah, I mean, in cash, I definitely think both quarterbacks are viable, and I agree with you. I love Green and all formats really.
Yeah, it's an interesting, like it's a game I could see winning people GPPs, or literally just like everybody has. I think Drake May will get there. I think those receivers will get there, but everyone else has like 4 fantasy points. All right, moving over to Minnesota, Nebraska. Not a ton of places I really want to go here. Kind of big news for me is whether Casey Thompson goes or not. Just because one of my big plays I really like is Palmer, Trey Palmer. I am off of him if Casey Thompson's not going, just because he's not getting the targets. But if Thompson does go, I think Palmer's a really nice play here. Gets a ton of targets, ton of volume, has huge upside, but last week had 1 target for 1 yard, or 1 catch for 1 yard. So I mean, just not there without him. My biggest play here that I think is a great play finally in all formats is Mo Ibrahim. Finally, he's getting that volume. He has 30 and 36 carries the last 2 weeks. Had 3 touchdowns last week. Had 100. Still is the 100-yard machine. We kind of were off of him for a while. Has 100 yards in every single game. He's going to get you that bonus. So you got that nice, 13-point, 19-point floor with his 100 yards and his touchdown that he literally gets every week. And Nebraska is not a great tackling team. They've gotten a little bit better the past couple weeks against the run, but at 7,300, I mean, it's going to be hard for me not to play him a lot just because of his. I think he has 40-point upside here for sure. What are you looking at, Aaron?
Yeah, mostly just Ibrahim. He's one of my favorite plays on the slate. Potts maybe for deep GPPs, but honestly, the position's so loaded, you probably don't even need to go there. But yeah, heavy amount of Ibrahim for me this week.
Yeah, I like that a lot. Just in there. Going over to Ohio State at Northwestern. I know you don't want to talk about this game.
Wait, you're breaking up there.
Yeah, I thought so. Total here is 55.5 with Ohio State favored by 38.5. Few things. Stroud has a ceiling. I don't love this game for him just because I don't think they need him. Total's not there at 9,100. And if you go down game log, he hasn't gotten there a ton. He hadn't had to. So, I mean, you have that Iowa game where, blowout. Michigan State had a good game. I think they wanted to go in there and make a good impression. I mean, you have some of these games, if he's getting to 30 points, he's not going to do it for you. So, you need that 40, 45 point upside here. I think it's a great spot. I just don't think they just haven't seemed to want to use that this year like they have in the past. So he's a top GPP play for me, but at that price, he's I don't really want him in cash with the other quarterbacks on this slate. Maya Williams looks like he's coming back. I really liked when he was not in there because I thought was going to be a very good play. I think they're both GPP-ish plays. But again, when they're both in there, I don't know who's getting the volume, and I don't think you really need to guess who's going to get the volume. A few of them just because I don't love this Northwestern tackling game.
Yeah.
But I mean, at that price, it's hard when you're splitting the work, and you're going to get some Dallas Hayden in there as well, where if it gets out of hand. So there's really, I don't think you have to go there, unless if something happens and Williams is out here. I think Anderson becomes a top play on the slate. Even if he gets you 15 carries here, he could really go off. Going over to wide receiver, it has been the weirdest year for this. They're throwing the ball a ton. Harrison has a good week, and then Egbuka has a good week. Harrison's finally kind of building his repertoire there with with Stroud. I think I don't mind him in most formats. I'm kind of avoiding them in cash right now just because of the way it's going. But last week Harrison had 10 targets, Egbuka had 9. Egbuka started the game. I think his first 5 catches were for maybe 5 targets. He had 4 catches for -1 yard, and then he had a couple of big catches. I kind of like him here. He's expensive, but I kind of like him in GPPs. I think people are going to see that. They're going to get off of him. They're going to go to Harrison. Harrison's 300 more and had 2 big games in a row. And, 2 out of the last 3. And even the Iowa game was decent. And he looked a lot better than Egbuka. And, if they're getting the same volume, Egbuka goes off here for, 40. If Harrison has 25, it gets you that far ahead. So I think he's a decent GPP play. If Smith and Jigba is out again, Fleming's in play at that price. I like getting a piece of this offense at that price. I don't know if Jay comes back. I don't know what's going to happen this year if he's going to play. I think it wouldn't shock me if he came in Michigan game and went off for 8 catches for 140 yards and 2 touchdowns after not doing anything all year. And he's sitting there at 500. But it's really hard to play him until he gets healthy and we can see. Yeah, that's kind of my thoughts on here. What about you, Aaron?
Yeah, it's interesting. So there's 40-mile-per-hour winds in Evanston that are forecast.
Yeah, I heard that.
The total's been dropping like crazy all week. So I really like I don't think you need Stroud or the passing game. I see the case for Egbuka, but I like both Henderson and Williams. I do agree. I'd lean GPP just because they'll both get volume. Because I could see them running 60 times. So those are definitely my 2 favorite plays. And how much is Stover for
Let me right down here.
That might be
I don't hate him.
Yeah, that might be an interesting different way to get some Ohio State exposure without breaking the bankroll.
I don't hate if they're going to go off here and they're going to run it a ton. I don't hate going to Dallin Hayden either.
Yeah.
Against Michigan, they went there against Michigan State and the end of the game, they pull their starters in the middle of the third quarter. He could get, and they're not going to throw the ball a ton because of the wind. He could get 12 to 15 carries against it could be Northwestern could pull some of their starters as well. So I mean, I kind of and as a GPP play, okay, as a value piece. Moving over to Tulane at Tulsa. Another interesting game. Tulsa's an interesting team. They're going to Tulsa here. Tulane is favored by 7.5 with a 57.5 point total. I think Pratt's a great value play here. Been really good for for the most part of the year, had a little bit of a down week against Memphis. But Memphis actually has a pretty decent defense. That USF game he went off. ECU had a nice game. It was more of a GPP play for me with some of the other. There's some areas where I like him in cash, and Tulsa struggled against score. Davis Brin has upside. He also has a floor. Started the season really well, kind of like he had the past couple of years, and then, had that Ole Miss game, and then got into conference and just hasn't been able to do anything, which is really weird because they have a really decent receiving core. Going over to running back are two places I really like here. Prince is getting a ton of volume. He was suspended first, 4 weeks of the season, and came in and really started getting volume the last 2 weeks. Has big plays. Tulane has a great run defense though, so he's GPP only for sure. And then Spears gets involved everywhere. I wish he was a little bit cheaper here, just because of Tulsa's had some decent games against running backs. But I mean, 3 of his last 4 games over 23 fantasy points with average around 30. Those 4 games, if you take out that ECU game. So I really think this is another decent spot for him where I don't think he'll carry a ton of owners. Going over to wide receivers, I don't really like going to the Tulane wide receivers. They really spread out that volume. Keaton Stokes has big upside, big play receiver than a volume guy. So you kind of need those big plays, which I don't like at that price. But he's in a GPP play if you want to. Santana gets a ton of volume, but he started off the year hot, and then since then, all of these receivers have really come back down to. So my main plays here are Pratt and Spears, and maybe some Stokes in there. What are you looking at?
Yeah, I agree on Pratt and Spears. I think Pratt's a really nice cash game piece, I think.
I mean, there's not a ton of, he's got the best floor probably of all those quarterbacks down there. Out of that, you don't really get to very stable quarterbacks on the slate until you get to about 75, 7,600 besides him. So I do think I agree with that, especially on this game. Going over to Baylor at Oklahoma. Baylor's traveling to Oklahoma with Baylor's a 3.5 point favorite with total 61.5. I'm sorry, Oklahoma is. But the interesting game here again. I don't know why they insist on Gabriel being this expensive, but he is. So I kind of just fade him. I kind of like Chapin here. Oklahoma's defense has stepped up the past couple of weeks, but Chapin has that 20, 25 point upside. And if Oklahoma goes back to how they were playing, he could really get 28, 30 points here, especially with the total. Don't hate it for GPPs. Over to running back, I'm going to ride the Richard Reese train until the wheels fall off now, basically. 67 carries in the last 2 weeks, well over 300 yards. He has 5 touchdowns, averaging just under 40 Draftkings points a game. Those 2 weeks, now he gets an Oklahoma team that can't tackle. 6K, he's a great play here. Eric Gray is starting to get volume, but at that price, there's just so many other places I would go before him. Then going to wide receiver, a few value plays. Graham Holmes gets a little bit of volume, kind of a mid-price play. And then going down, Hal Presley had 9 targets last week. Didn't do a ton with them, but just a value piece here if you want to do a little mini game stack, one on each side for this. So yeah, I mean, my main plays here, my main play would be Reese with a little bit of Holmes and Presley mixed in just as single pieces. And then Chapin maybe in a few lineups just to try to take advantage of that Oklahoma pass defense. What are you looking at?
Yeah, I love Reese here too. I can't believe how loaded running back is. Yeah, Chapin's interesting. I'm not. I'll have some for sure. I'm not sure how much. but it's, with the game being close, you're going to get a bunch of touchdowns here. So I don't mind Shapen either. I like Pratt a little better, I think,
Yeah,
with his
for sure.
ability. But yeah, Shapen and Reese I like a lot. And then on the Oklahoma side, maybe Gray or Mims and GPP, but I don't know. They're not exciting this year.
And they're just super expensive. Like they have them priced up, and they're not playing like it. Going over to the game of the day, Tennessee traveling to Georgia. Very interesting game here for me. One of the top offenses against one of the top defenses. I do think it's mostly GPP game just because of that. There's some places, in cash that I like, but I would rather go to safer places. That being said, starting quarterback, Hendon Hooker, I think is a top GPP quarterback play. Saw what he did against Alabama. He's gonna throw it a ton. If they get down, he throws interceptions. They don't care. They're going to throw it a ton. And Stetson Bennett is interesting to me here to run back for game stacks. I don't want him by himself ever, but I don't hate making a few lineups with him coming back because this is a very bad pass defense that Tennessee has. Didn't show it last week. Will Levis couldn't expose it, but they really have a very bad pass defense. And Stetson Bennett showed us at the beginning of the year he can air it out when he wants to. That being said, when you do that, you're going to want to put in your pieces like Bowers and McConkey because one of them is going to go off if Stetson Bennett is going to go off. And then for Tennessee, the kind of piece I want to mix and match, McCoy actually led the team last week in targets, which I was interested to see. Had 8 targets. Hyatt had 6. Tillman had 3. Keaton's kind of out with Tillman back in, so I'm not going there. But those are all 3 pieces that I will look at here. I could see Georgia really trying to push Hyatt out here and really have to go to McCoy. And Tillman, talent-wise, is the best receiver on that team.
Yeah.
He's not in full health. So, but talent-wise, he is eventually going to go off. He is by far the best receiver on that team. So, he's a guy I kind of, I want to get over the field on. Not necessarily. I don't know that he's fully healthy. Don't know anything more than anyone else, but he ran a decent amount of routes last week, got some catches, got his feet under him, and this is their biggest game of the year. So
Tillman's
that's kind of where I'm at.
really cheap on FanDuel, by the way.
Is he? What's he at?
He is. I'm pulling it up. He's 5,800.
Yeah, no.
So, and even then, I don't know if he's a cash play just because it's so spread out. What do you think of Tennessee's team total? It's around 28 or 29. Do you think they go over?
This is a game I kind of probably am going to bet in game more than anything.
Yeah.
Because I kind of want to see how that first series go. One play I forgot to mention that I really like here is Dejon Edwards. Continues to get a ton of, he's the most consistent volume guy for Georgia all year. Has a touchdown each of the last 4 games. Wanted to throw that in there just at 4,500. I think it's a great way to get a piece of this game. Cheap that you can have in most of your lineups. But yeah, as far as betting the game, I think I'm going to wait and bet it in game because I think it's going to be very clear very quickly how this game is going to go. And I think you can bet the total. These games easily, you can usually see if a team's moving the ball or not. And then especially with a turnover, they don't change that total very much. And a team should have scored, you can really hit that hard. Any plays you like here? What are you thinking here,
Aaron? Yeah, I'm weighing Hooker as at 8K. I like him a good amount, but I'm trying to. Right now, I'm laying GPP only, but it's very tempting. I agree with Edwards. I think it's a great. He's a great play. I wouldn't look at the other running backs, and then a receiver Tillman on FanDuel, and McConkey is interesting. Well, Bowers and McConkey are interesting in GPPs just because it should be a close game. So it's not the usual Georgia game script. So they're interesting to me.
Yeah, it'll be really, yeah. I mean, that's my thing is, I don't know how much ownership they get, but if you get, a couple weeks ago, the Alabama game, I game stacked this a ton and really made out with it. Going over to not as sexy of a game. We have Oregon going to Colorado. It'll be very pretty for Oregon and not very pretty for Colorado. Bo Nix sitting here at 9,600, most expensive quarterback on the slate. If you can pay for him, go for him. Should put up a ton of numbers. Biggest concern here is they pull him early, but I still think he's fine in all formats. Going over to running back, Bucky Irving. He's getting used in the run game and the pass game. Didn't have quite the volume last week that he did before, but still getting a ton, and this is a really nice spot for him. The other plays I really like here, really great value play, is Noah Whittington. He actually had the same amount of runs last week, had 2 more receptions, some big plays. They're really trying to get him involved. This is a great spot for this run game. And this is a guy they really want to keep getting involved and getting a bigger and bigger role for them. So he's a guy that I think I'm going to have in a lot of lineups. Will probably be my biggest piece of this game that I have just because of the value. Then another guy that I wish they would price a little bit cheaper. He has a huge upside, but he also has a huge floor. Is Troy Franklin. Just can't do it with that price. I think he's a decent play, but just it's hard to go there at that price. Anything else you see here, Aaron? What are you looking at?
Yeah, I like Whittington a lot too. The game environment's so nice that both Irving and Whittington can eat. Bo Nix is really interesting. He's been so consistent, and we have a lot of cheap plays. I did play Bo Nix over. His passing yardage prop was really low. It was only like 264 when he's gone over that most weeks, and he's been really efficient. Look at those percentages, the 80s, high 70s. You don't need he could play 3 quarters and still get there. So I could see him in lineups just with all the value we have at running back.
Yeah, I don't mind him at all. If you can get there, and you feel comfortable with the rest of your lineup, go for it. I don't hate that at all. Going over to Oklahoma State at Kansas, another game where we need to watch for a ton of news. So Oklahoma State is going to Kansas. They're 1-point favorite with a 63.5 point total. This spread has come down a little bit since it came out. I think there's 2 things to watch for as far as quarterbacks goes. Jalen Daniels has been practicing all week. Jalen Daniels plays. He is a good play here. And we saw Oklahoma State get torched last week. They don't have the best tackling defense right now. They just have looked kind of lost lately. And then Spencer Sanders came out of the game last week. He's technically questionable. There hadn't been a lot of news that came out. We don't know what's going to happen there. If he goes, I love him. I think he's a great play. He's out. There's no way I'm going to Gundy. Just did not look good last week. So it's kind of Sanders or bust. Going to running back, we need to watch Richardson. Richardson came out last week did not play last week. It was undisclosed why. We don't know if he's going to play this week. There hasn't really been much news. So, again, we need to watch for news there. If he goes, I think he is an absolutely great play. If not, they kind of were awful on offense all the way around last week without Sanders in there. So it's kind of, again, leaning on that. And I think there's better places to go this week, although I do think there's some upside here. Wide receiver, same thing. If Sanders is out, I'm just off of all of the wide receivers. I don't want to touch them for the most part. I might take a little bit of Bryson Green. He still had a ton of targets last week, but just the quality wasn't there. The quality of the targets was not there. He still had, I think, 8 targets. That being said, if Sanders is a go, Bryson Green is a top play on the slate for me. So that's kind of how important he is on this slate and what we need to watch for. Because Bryson Green at 5,600 could easily get you 25 to 30 fantasy points here. So Yeah, to me, this is very much a news game. We need to see if Sanders is going, Daniels is going. If Daniels and Sanders both go, if you want to make some lineups that you're willing to sit around until 2 o'clock and edit, I do not hate stacking this game, making a complete game stack with Sanders and Daniels in it, taking some of these receivers and plugging in your pieces. But you better have other lineups made that you can pivot it over to get out of that because one or both could be out. But if you have those, you might be like 1% of people that have this game stacked. So it's kind of one of those, huge risk, huge reward kind of things. But with a 64-point total and a 1-point spread, this is a game that could very much shoot out and, put up a ton of fantasy points. One of these defenses are great. But yeah, what are you looking at, Aaron?
Yeah, it's definitely big, like excess out for cash games just because
Yeah.
the late start and all the injury questions. But I agree. We kind of did that last week where we had some late lineups going, and I don't mind that. There's enough pieces in this window to make it happen. Yeah, definitely interested in Daniels and Sanders if they go. I agree on Gundy. Also, like no part of him if Sanders is out. Neal's been solid. I don't know if I like him at running back as much as like per dollar. I don't love it relative to like a Whittington even. And where's my guy Fairchild? I'm looking up his price.
He's down here at 3,700.
Yeah, he kind of disappointed last week, but he's had a few good games, and I agree. Green's a really strong play if we get Sanders.
I will say one thing that I kind of would throw in there. I don't hate Jason Bean here. Oklahoma State has really struggled against quarterbacks, and Bean has been pretty good since he started. I could see him getting 30 fantasy points here. So if it's one of those things where you're looking at someone right around the same price and you want to leave 300 extra on the board to get up to Daniels, I think that's a decent idea here as well. Moving over to Syracuse, going to Pittsburgh. Pitt's a 3.5-point favorite here with a 48-point total. Some news we need to watch here too. Schrader went out last week. I think he took a blow to the head, if I remember right. And it was awful. I had him in cash. I had him all over the place, and that really hurt. If he's back here, he's in play. Again, this cheap price, if he's getting you 20 to 25 points. Don't really want to go to Del Rio Wilson. He didn't look very good at all. If he is out, I really like Sean Tucker. He should get a ton of volume, but Pitt will load the box a little bit, so it's a little bit of a risk, but at this price is decent. Is he a Bonaconda? Let's talk about that for a second. My God, this volume.
Yeah.
10 touchdowns in the last 3 games. 600 yards, almost 600 yards, almost 100 touches. Just wow. Really going off. We didn't have that Virginia Tech game on the board anywhere, but he had 71 fantasy points just to see kind of how that is going. He's a great play regardless. Syracuse does have a decent run defense, so it is a little bit more of a struggle than against Virginia Tech, but still a great play here. And then going over to wide receiver, Gatson. I went back and looked. I think he's a good play despite even if Schrader's out. He had 6 targets and a touchdown, I believe, after Del Rio Wilson came in. So they're still going to try to get him. He's a big dude. He's like 6'5", 6'6". So he has a big range that kind of helps with inaccurate quarterbacks. And they can just kind of throw it up to him, and he can get over the DBs. So I do think he's in play. Jared Wayne finally went off last week. They've lost like all of their receivers to either injury or transfer portal. They have like 4 decent ones left. Mumfield came back, took some of the coverage off, and Wayne had 14 targets last week. Getting up there in price for me. don't totally love the price, but I do think he's in play here for sure, and he's a cash play if you really want to go there. If he's going to get that kind of volume with all of their scholarship players out. But outside of that, not much I really like here. And I'm kind of disappointed in Mumfield this year. Thought he'd have a bigger year. Slovis hasn't done anything to show that he was one of the top quarterbacks in the country at one point out of high school. But yeah, that's kind of where I'm at. What are you looking at?
Yeah, I like mostly the running backs, Izzy and Tucker. I like a lot, especially with the uncertainty of a quarterback for Syracuse. I'm really heavy on. I'm gonna be really heavy. Izzy's gonna be a core play on FanDuel. Just it's really weird. The games are completely different on FanDuel this week, but this is one of the few common games. And I like you can't go wrong with him, especially on FanDuel with touchdown equity.
Yep.
So mostly the running backs. I do like Gadsden a little bit, but mostly the running backs for me.
Yeah, and I agree on fan. You're always looking for that touchdown upside. All right, Penn State is going to Indiana, where Penn State's a 14-point favorite, and there is a 42.5-point total. Few places I really like here. Always Clifford will get cheaper. I think he's decent player, but he's just too expensive with some of the value here. Singleton and Allen are both definitely in play for me here. They're nice value plays. I would not play them together. They score on opposite weeks. They each get different, areas of the ball on different weeks. It seems like they kind of carve out a role during the week for them since they're freshmen, and they stick to that role every week. But I could see either of them going off here. So I definitely think both are in play for GPPs, just not in the same lineup. Going over to wide receiver, Parker Washington has 21 targets over the last 2 weeks. Like, they finally realized that he was really good for them last year, and that maybe they should get him involved this year in the slot because that's something they can do well. A little bit expensive for me, but he's kind of priced where he should be the past 2 weeks. 20 and 37 fantasy points. He's earned that price, and this is a great matchup for him. One note on Indiana, Cam Camper is out for the year. I think he tore ACL. Kind of want to watch what happens with it. There's a few different things of who's starting, but I want to see who's going to take that outside role. DJ Matthews could really benefit from this. He's, I think, the best receiver left on that team, but I don't think this is going to match up for it. I kind of want to see where the targets go this week. Hope they kind of get blown out and don't get a ton, and then use that again later when we see where the target share is going. But yeah, that's about all I have here. The running backs and Parker Washington, I kind of want pieces of. What are you looking at here?
Yeah, there's some. It seems like they could give Tuttle some looks, so that kind of exacerbates the Indiana receivers. So this is one of the games with there's a win advisory in this game. So I like Parker Washington a lot too. He's been really good. I've been impressed with him. And maybe just Simmons or DJ Matthews on the Indiana side.
Yeah, there's not a ton here. I mean, I like those GPP plays. Just they're decent prices, and we know either of them, they have the talent to go off. One of them will eventually have a huge game. Last game on this slate, UCF at Memphis. Very interesting game for a lot of reasons to me.
Yes.
Plumlee's questionable. Kind of have to see what's going to happen. He's been like kind of day to day is what I've read. If not, Mikey Keene is going here. I don't really want any Mikey Keene. But kind of a side note on Mikey Keene, in this game last year, he started and he went like 7 for 17 or something and just was awful against Memphis. Memphis kind of has his numbers. That being said, I still think he has upside and helps the receivers more than Plumlee does. And we'll get to that in a second. Seth Hennigan, I think, is a decent play here. We don't know week to week what UCF defense is going to come out against quarterbacks. Sometimes they're really good. Sometimes they're not very good. But Hennigan's putting up the ball a ton, airing it out a ton, had averaged 30, DraftKings points the last 2 weeks in close games. I think this is a game that could shoot out. Total here is 59.5 with UCF favored by 3.5. So he is a guy that, another one of those, mid-6 quarterbacks I really like. If Plumlee is out, I really like Isaiah Bauer. He should get more carries here. And then Richardson should also get a few more carries here, possibly. Didn't last week, but he's a guy. And I know RJ Harvey got a few extra carries, got a lot of carries last week as well. So I think all three of them are in play. RJ Harvey, I do really like if Plumlee is out the most, probably, just because of his value and the price there. But I don't mind either of these, and even Richardson gets sometimes some goal line touches, which I really like as well. I don't really like going to Memphis running game. They just kind of spread it out too much this year. Three guys, I guess, I really like for UCF. And I like them a little bit more, honestly, if Plumlee is out, or O'Keefe, Hudson, and Baker. They're going to get a lot more targets if Keene starts. That being said, they're going to not sack the box as much, so they're going to have more coverage. So it's kind of a catch-22. But I do think all three are in play for GPPs. That's about it here for me. These are all GPP plays for me. But I do think it's a very interesting game. They could put up a ton of fantasy points. What are you looking at here?
Yeah, definitely monitor the injury news for this one. Keene's really cheap on FanDuel. He's like 6,500, but the problem is the late start. So that's annoying, but I'll probably still have some anyway. And yeah, I agree on the Bowser call, and Harvey's looked good. He's pretty explosive for them. And then if you're looking for a stack for Hennigan, it would be Priestcorn, the tight end. That's who they look to in the end zone.
Yep. I like Priestcorn. I just wish you got more volume for that price. He's creeped up there to that price. Sure. I played a lot of them that week when they played U of H 4,100 that weeknight game. But yeah, so that's this. That does it for this DraftKings slate. I know you said the FanDuel slate's a little bit different. What are some of your top plays over there?
Yeah, so FanDuel included a few weather games, and I don't like it as much. They included some games that are like better watching games than fantasy games. Like Alabama LSU isn't a great fantasy game. FSU Miami, like brand game, but not great fantasy wise. That said, I think the Memphis game's on there, and that's pretty interesting because Keene is cheap, and that's a pretty strong play. I mentioned Tillman. Tillman's 6,100 on FanDuel, so that's a pretty strong play to get some exposure to that game. And not a whole lot. I'm still putting together some of my top plays and playing with lineups.
Very cool, very cool. And yeah, if you want all of Aaron's top plays for FanDuel, my plays over for DraftKings, be sure to head on over to dfsarmy.com. Sign up today. We have all of our sports going right now. MLB is almost wrapping up. We have NHL going, college football is full steam ahead, NFL is full steam ahead. All the smaller sports, we got tennis, we got soccer, we have everything for you there. And yeah, come on over today. You can get 10% off your lifetime subscription. Check the link down below in the description, and we'd love to see you over there. We have our Domination Station Optimizer for college football going right now. Have late swap for that, which is really come in handy a few times this year with some of these crazy news. Our Discord is where we share all that crazy news up to the minute. Keep us all going. Aaron's done a really good job this week while I've been paying way too much attention to my Astros. We have, our notes, all of our picks will be up there as well. So yeah, we hope to see you soon. Hope you have a good week, and we will see you next week. Good luck out there.